The palace of Velsarith had 47 wings, 300 ceremonial chambers, and exactly one human employee. His name was Varek. He had come to Velsarith 6 years ago through the Interstellar Labor Exchange, a quietly revolutionary program that placed humans in alien households and institutions as domestic workers. The Velsarith Royal Council had accepted one human on a trial basis, mostly to satisfy a trade clause buried deep in a diplomatic agreement with Earth. They had assigned him to the lowest possible station, maintenance, sanitation, floor-level custodial duties, and then, as alien bureaucracies often do, they had forgotten about him entirely. Varek did not mind being forgotten. He was 31 years old, broad-shouldered, and quiet in the way that long-time solitary workers become quiet. Not sad, just settled. He mopped floors that stretched longer than football fields. He polished stone that had been polished for 4,000 years before he arrived. He fixed ventilation grates in sublevels where no one of rank ever descended. He ate his meals alone in a utility alcove off the Eastern Maintenance Corridor, reading old paperback novels he had shipped from Earth in a battered duffel bag. He was, by every official measure, invisible. Then Lyra found him. She was 4 years old the first time. 4 years old in the Velsarith calendar, which translated to roughly 7 in human terms. The Queen's only heir. The future sovereign of a civilization that spanned 11 star systems. She had enormous violet eyes, silver-white skin that shimmered faintly at the edges like something caught between solid and light, and the terrifying, weaponized stubbornness that only very small children of enormous power ever fully develop. She had also, apparently, discovered that the palace had a subterranean maintenance level. Varek found her sitting on an upturned cleaning bucket outside his utility alcove, watching him eat a sandwich with the focused, analytical attention of a scientist observing a previously undocumented species. "You have soft hands," she said. It was not a greeting. It was a data point. Varek looked at his hands. Compared to what? The palace guards have hard hands. They are always grabbing. She tilted her head. "You do not grab." "I'm a janitor," he said. "Nothing I clean needs grabbing." She considered this for a long moment. Then she climbed off the bucket, walked directly to him, and sat down cross-legged on the floor beside his boots as though she had made a decision that the rest of the universe would simply have to accommodate. "I will stay here," she announced. "You probably shouldn't. I am the Queen's heir." "I know." "Then you know you cannot make me leave." Varek looked at her. She looked back. He finished his sandwich. "Fair enough," he said. She came back the next day, and the day after that. By the second week, the palace had launched its first formal search. Varek emerged from a sublevel access corridor with a mop in one hand to find 12 palace guards in ceremonial armor standing in a rigid formation while a small silver-skinned child sat on the floor behind him, asleep against his knee. The head of the royal guard, a towering, violet-crested Velsarith officer named Commander Orith, stared at the scene with the expression of a being whose entire professional life had just become structurally unsound. "She is," Orith began. "Sleeping," Varek said, keeping his voice low. "She has been missing for 4 hours. She has been here for 4 hours. Those are different things." Orith's crest flattened. "You should have reported." "She's a child," Varek said. She sat down and fell asleep. "I wasn't going to wake her up and drag her back through the palace." She looked tired. There was a very long silence in the corridor. "She is the Queen's heir," Orith finally said, as though this resolved everything. "Yes," Varek agreed. "And she's asleep." "So." Orith looked at the sleeping child. He looked at the human janitor. He made a sound like a pressure valve releasing. Then he turned to his guards and said, very quietly, "We wait." The Queen herself came on the 6th incident. Her name was Serethvel, and she was the kind of person who entered rooms and made the architecture feel grateful for her presence. She was taller than Varek by half a meter, wore authority like a second skin, and had the precise, measuring eyes of someone who had spent decades separating what mattered from what merely appeared to matter. She found Varek in the Eastern Maintenance alcove, reading. Lyra was asleep in his lap, one small hand curled loosely around 2 of his fingers, her silver hair spilling over his knee. He had one hand resting gently on her back, unconsciously steadying her breathing the way people do when they've been sitting still with a sleeping child long enough that the rhythm becomes shared. He looked up when the Queen entered. He didn't stand. He clearly understood that standing would wake Lyra, but he met her eyes directly and said, "Your Majesty," in a tone that was respectful without being frightened. The queen stood in the doorway for a long time. "Why?" she said at last. "Does she always come here?" Varric thought about it honestly. "I don't grab," he said. "I don't hurry her. I don't need anything from her. I think." He paused, looking down at the child in his lap. "I think most people around her need something. Even the people who love her. They need her to be heir, to be future queen, to behave correctly, to develop correctly, to be ready." He looked back up. "I just need the floor mopped. She's not useful to me in any official sense, so she can just be a kid for a while." The queen was quiet for a very long time. "She told me," she said finally, her voice different now, smaller, stripped of ceremony, "that you read to her. Sometimes, when she can't sleep." "What do you read?" "Old stories. Human ones. She likes the ones with dragons." Something moved across the queen's face that was too complicated to name. "The council," she said slowly, "wishes to have you reassigned. They find it inappropriate. The heir consorting with maintenance staff." "I understand," Varric said. "They are wrong," the queen said. Varric said nothing. He waited. "My daughter," Serethvel said, "has 17 tutors, for protocol advisors, 2 ceremonial guardians, and a full council of developmental specialists who meet quarterly to assess her readiness for succession." She looked at Lyra's sleeping face. "She is 7 years old, and she is exhausted in a way that none of them see because they are too busy looking at what she will become to see what she is." Her voice did not break, but it came close. "You see her. She's easy to see," Varric said simply. "She's a good kid." The queen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she had made a decision. "You will be given a formal secondary designation," she said. "Personal attendant to the heir, concurrent with your existing role. It carries no additional duties. It simply makes the arrangement official. The council cannot argue with an official designation." Varric looked down at Lyra, who had shifted in her sleep and tucked her head more firmly into the crook of his arm. "She'll want to keep coming here," he said, "to the maintenance level. She likes it because it doesn't feel like the palace." "I know." "Then yes," he said. "All right." 3 years later, a delegation from the Conclave of 7 Systems arrived at Valsereth for a state summit of significant diplomatic consequence. They were, naturally, given a full tour of the palace. On the 3rd corridor of the Eastern Maintenance sublevel, the delegation's lead diplomat, a creature of immense self-importance named Prelate Duvan, stopped short. A small girl with silver-white skin sat on the floor beside a human in a maintenance uniform. The human was reading aloud from a battered paperback. The girl was building something complicated out of spare ventilation parts, asking questions without looking up, and occasionally correcting his pronunciation when he read the dragon names wrong. Duvan turned to Commander Orith, who had been quietly assigned as the delegation's escort precisely because he was very good at managing situations. "Is that?" Duvan lowered his voice. "Is that the Queen's heir? Sitting on a maintenance floor with a human janitor?" "Yes," Orith said. "Is this permitted?" Orith considered the question for a moment. He thought about a corridor, for years ago, and a small child asleep against a stranger's knee, and a human who had not moved, had not panicked, had not needed anything explained, who had simply sat still and let a tired child rest. "It is," Orith said, "the most important thing that happens in this palace." Duvan stared at him. Orith watched the girl hand Varric a ventilation fitting and explain, very seriously, that the dragon in Chapter 4 would not actually be able to breathe methane-based fire in a low-oxygen atmosphere, and that Varric should write to the author about this. Varric said he would get right on that. Lyra looked satisfied. Orith almost smiled. "Come," he said to the delegation. "There is much more of the palace to see." But he thought, walking away, that they had already seen the best of it.